Got my coffee and today's guest here with me, so we're ready to roll. Welcome to the Circular Coffee Break podcast, where we will be casually talking about everything circular and beyond. Now, let's get started. My guest today is Tarja Koski, Senior Sustainability Manager at Finnair. With a strong background in corporate sustainability and corporate responsibility, Tarja has been driving Finnair's environmental and social initiatives, ensuring alignment with evolving regulatory frameworks and industry best practices. Her expertise spans sustainability reporting, ESG strategy development, stakeholder engagement, and very many other aspects that are all critical in shaping the aviation sector's sustainability and, more specifically, circularity transition. I'm really looking forward to discussing with Tarja about Finnair and how Finnair is addressing circularity. Welcome to the show, Tarja.
Thank you so much, and thanks for inviting me. It's always great to talk the circular economy topic, especially coming from aviation. It's a lot of talk about climate, so this is a very refreshing topic.
Perfect. Thanks a lot for joining us today. And as you said, circularity is an important topic, but it's maybe not always the first that comes to mind in the context of the aviation industry. Now, to get us started, could you please briefly introduce yourself, your role at Finnair, and maybe a little bit about your professional journey so far?
Yes, certainly. So I have always had the interest to sustainability topics and especially the material use and what circular economy can do there. I studied back in the early years of 2000 in the Turku Business University, and sustainability or environmental topics were really not a topic back then. So I drifted on to commercial roles, always within travel and tourism. And then I joined Finnair in 2017 and led the commercial and technical change of airline distribution. And after a few years in that, I finally took the decision and decided to pursue the studies that I always wanted. So I went on and studied sustainability management. And after that, there was an opening in the sustainability team, and that's when I joined this team. And I am actually at the moment in charge of the circular economy program at Finnair. So working very closely together with our operational units in driving circularity throughout the organization. Other than that, I'm also involved in the sustainable aviation fuel program that we have, and there my responsibility area is customer engagement, very much stemming from my old commercial roles.
Cool. Very, very interesting. I think all of these topics have a extremely high relevance in the context of sustainability, but also circularity. Now, before we jump into circularity, maybe you could outline a little bit Finnair's key sustainability priorities and how the company is basically working to make air travel more sustainable.
Yes, and we tend to talk a lot about the environmental sustainability topics. So let me start with some of the social aspects that we have prioritized and see very important. And of course, when talking about aviation, safety is key. And actually, when conducting our CSRD-related double materiality assessment a few years back, safety was the number one topic in the eyes of our customers as well. And it's, of course, very much embedded in everything that we as an airline do. But on top of that, on the social sustainability side, accessibility is very important for us, so that all customer groups can enjoy our services. And we have worked quite a lot in making sure that we can serve the different customer groups. And we have, for example, joined the Sunflower initiative last year or the year before. Other topics there are the employee well-being, obviously, professional growth, and lately the diversity, equity, and inclusion where we have just formed our first internal working group on these topics, which is quite exciting. Then on the environmental side, being an airline, we can't not talk about climate. So that is, of course, our number one environmental focus. And we measure the impact of our actions. So the CO2 emissions per RTK is the unit of measurement, so revenue ton kilometer. And we have just last year gotten our science-based targets validated by the SBTi. We are working on that side on quite a few things, from new aircraft technologies to fuel efficient operations and sustainable aviation fuel especially. Then on the environmental side, actually noise is something that rarely gets talked about, but this is a sustainability impact that we have as well, and we are taking measures to prevent especially nighttime noise pollution. Biodiversity is important, especially when we start talking about sustainable aviation fuels and the production of those. And then, of course, circular economy. So the materials we use and the waste we generate. And I would say that from the environmental side, climate and emissions is definitely number one, but then circular economy is a good second.
Interesting. It's a very long list at the end of the day, and I can personally relate very much to the noise pollution you mentioned. Living in a place where, depending on what angle the flights take to Helsinki-Vantaa Airport, they're actually flying directly over our house. So from that point of view, I can personally directly relate to what you mean there. But coming back to the circularity, you mentioned you're responsible for the circularity program. Maybe you could allude a little bit to what does circularity mean in the context of Finnair's operations, and maybe also outline some concrete examples of how you incorporate circularity and what type of circularity initiatives you've been driving.
Yes, definitely. And I think maybe it's good to start with what sort of materials are we using, what goes through an airline operator as per material use. And fuel is obviously the biggest single material that we use, 1 million tons per year. But that aside, it is actually maybe a bit surprising that we fly these big aircraft that weigh a lot and we repair those, but actually the biggest material consumption of our operations goes through our Finnair kitchen in the catering operations. So an aircraft, we just got a new aircraft last year, and that weighs about 140 tons, which is a lot of materials. But at the same time, we go through that amount of materials in our catering operations in about a week. So it's good to understand what we are talking about. And when I said circular economy program, we have started this 5-year program back in 2021. So we're actually in the last year of the program. And the ambitious goal was to introduce 100% material management throughout the organization. And here we talk namely about Finnair Kitchen. Then we have our technical operations and our cargo operations that are sort of material heavy. And what does it mean that we manage our materials 100%? It means that we understand what comes in and what goes out. How can we reduce both of those, and implementing those measures to reduce and reuse and recycle, and then also monitoring the effects that we have. We are measuring within that program the waste that we generate per passenger and the recycling rate. And the recycling rate has gone up from 22% to almost 29%. And it might seem like quite a low number, recycling rate of 29, but what's good to understand, and I always need to highlight, is that we cannot actually recycle the international catering waste. That's due to the animal health regulation. We have to incinerate that waste type. Within that program, it is very much continuous improvement. So finding those small streams of materials that we can optimize the usage of, or finding those small streams of recyclable materials that go through our operations. And I mentioned earlier about safety being very important for our customers, obviously, but circular economy can be very visible in the cabin environment. What is on the tray, and where does the waste end up?
It's very interesting that you highlight specifically like the in-flight catering, the in-flight services compared to like what you would normally have in mind, these huge aircraft that basically catch your eye first thing. Now, I assume as Finnair, you operate globally. You work with a global network of suppliers, of partners, both in the catering as well as in the cargo. I assume. How do you see, or how do you enable these partnerships to drive circularity? Because I assume in many cases it's not Finnair who does the packaging or who does the cooking and provides the catering and all of that, but it's partners that you work with around the world. And in some places, they might be more aware of circularity than in other places. How does that play into your efforts and into your ability to actually drive, exactly as you said, this improvement in the recycling rate, but also in offering new services, offering new type of products in the in-flight onboard services?
Yes, definitely. I mean, we operate in a very international environment. We fly to 70-something destinations in Europe and 15 destinations outside of Europe. And it's we need to keep the level of service, whatever the destination might be. And I mean, collaboration is everything. We rely on our supply chain with the materials that they can provide, and also quite a bit on how the different service elements are constructed. The aviation industry is, of course, very regulated. So the cabin interiors, for example, they need to be designed in a certain way. And for example, a lot of flame retardants are used, which then hinders the possibility of recycling those fabrics, for example. I think the same goes for waste management. I mean, in aviation, weight is everything. So we want to have the aircraft and whatever flies with it as light as possible. So we would leave the waste generated on an outbound flight to the destination, which might be somewhere in Southeast Asia or Europe or wherever we fly to. And the recycling facilities might be quite different from what we are used to here in Finland. And that is still something that we need to be I mean, we've been very focused on our own operations here in Helsinki hub, and how can we make sure that we have the right materials, and once the waste comes back, how can we make sure that it's recycled? The next step would then be looking into the supply chain and our catering partners especially.
Interesting. Now, when we talk about the supply chain and the different types of services and switching to circular solutions, we very often naturally also talk about trade-offs when it comes to environmental impacts in different areas, when it comes to fuel utilization, but resource utilization and so on and so forth. How do you see that? How do you evaluate that? And how do you address that at Finnair?
Oh yes, definitely. This is a topic that we keep coming back to, the trade-offs. And for example, the catering equipment that we use on our flights. In the economy class, it's mainly disposables, and we evaluate, every couple of years we evaluate, would it be possible to have rollable servicing equipment. But then we need to take into account in the life cycle assessment, first of all, the weight, which is very important. We don't want to burn any more fuel than we absolutely have to. And then there are the safety requirements and, the plates and cups and cutlery, they need to be washed at certain temperatures with certain procedures, and we need to be able to guarantee that at every location. And then we need to actually know that, how is the water heated at a certain destination? Is that going to produce so much emissions that it actually makes more sense to use those disposable equipment? So definitely we think about this a lot, and we work a lot together with our suppliers. And here we come to the supply chain again, to find the lightest materials possible, but then also, for example, for the business class equipment, a durable material as well. So indeed, it is very much, you have to take a very holistic view on the sustainability topic in general, and circulating materials is just one aspect.
We touched a little bit the airplanes as one topic, and from design to decommissioning, they have a very long product life cycle. They're in use for a very long time. Now, how do you apply circularity when it comes to aircraft maintenance, potential refurbishing, end of life management, when it comes to really the airplanes that you use?
Yes, this is an interesting question. And of course, we have our own technical operations here in Helsinki that, their bread and butter is keeping those aircraft parts in use for as long as feasible. And they go through, 1,500 batteries a year, or different containers, 2,000 trolleys, wheels, brakes. They repair anything that is possible. Again, keeping in mind that their safety regulations are very strict. But this is very important, both from the circularity point of view, but also from financial perspective. So repairing, bigger aircraft structures to curtains, anything gets repaired at our own shop. But then we also participate in these so-called maintenance pools, where different spare parts are kept in sort of common warehouses. So they're not Finnair specific. We are not the only airline that flies an Airbus. So these are shared pools of spare parts, and they can be used in different airlines' aircraft, which of course then kind of reduces the need to have spare parts for each and every airline separately. That is quite a circular economy initiatives that has formed in this industry. Yeah, this also, of course, takes a bit of the burden from the logistics, because these pools are then situated in different parts of the world. And I have to mention now, back in 21, we recycled an entire Airbus A319 aircraft. I don't know if you read about this on our website or Blue Wings magazine, but yeah, the aircraft weighs about 40 tons. It's a smaller aircraft, and it was completely taken apart. So approximately 2,000 different parts and components were removed, and we were able to either reuse them ourselves or sell to other airlines. And then about the same percentage, so about 40% of the weight is then aluminium, which was sent to Mercedes-Benz for car manufacturing. And then the rest was, recycled or used for energy or research. But basically, over 80% went to reuse. So that's quite an interesting example.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's a huge step to be able to do that. I mean, at the end of life, to really look at the airplane and all its parts. And as you said, it's not just a handful of parts, it's thousands of parts we're talking about here. And to basically have a good portion of these that go into reuse or remanufacturing, refurbishing, and what's not possible to go into that direction, go into recycling. I think that's a really important step to understand that and really also test it in real life, so to say.
Yes, and that's, of course, that was a very interesting showcase and a big one. But as mentioned, a lot of the circular economy work that we do is this small improvement here and there, what we can do, from improving the process that customers can order their food so that we only make order-based loadings to the aircraft. And the cabin crew uniforms are being reused by new members of the cabin crew. So we refurbish them and then they get sent back to this rotating pool of cabin crew uniforms. And we've replaced the paper magazines with the digital versions. And
yeah, I noticed that.
yeah, then we have actually reduced quite a bit of the packaging that we do on the food items. And we have the single-use plastic packaging from 2018 to 2022. So that means 230 tons of plastic removed on annual basis. Of course, some of that was replaced by other materials, but nevertheless, that was quite a big achievement.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you're leading to an area that basically I had in my mind while you were talking, specifically about the catering and the onboard services. I mean, I'm a customer of Finnair. I'm flying on your flights frequently. How do you see the role of the passengers in basically this shift to circularity moving forward? I noticed, for example, that there's a discussion currently going on about light packaging. Like the less you pack your stuff into your suitcase that you don't need at your destination, the lighter the flight is, the better it is for the environment. But there's also naturally other topics you can think about. How do you see the role of the passenger in this shift to circularity in the aviation industry?
Yes, definitely. The customers can do a lot to help us save fuel and emit less CO2 emissions, as you mentioned. Pack light, be at the gate on time so that we don't run late, etc. So on that side, definitely there is a lot the customers can also do. Then when it comes to recycling the onboard waste, for example, and this mainly happens by the cabin crew in a very limited space. There isn't perhaps much that the customers can do there, but what they can do is, pre-order their meal, for example, so that we know exactly how much to load on the aircraft.
Interesting. Now, what do you see currently? I mean, in the initiatives you're having and looking maybe a little bit ahead, what do you see as the key challenges, as the key obstacles to overcome in order to further drive circularity at Finnair, but also more broadly in the aviation industry?
Well, even though I maybe don't want to, I have to mention the regulations. So the international catering waste and the non-recyclability of that is, of course, something that's slowing us down quite a bit. And we are actually quite active with IATA to try to make a risk assessment and possibly change that regulation so that we could then recycle the catering waste coming back from outside of EU as well. Another thing is of course the safety regulation when it comes to aircraft parts and interiors. So we can do certain things and design the interiors, for example, so that we could possibly keep those what we call soft elements flying as long as possible by repairing, and then also have them have another life. That would be fantastic.
Great, interesting. Now, the coffee is unfortunately empty, and it's time to wrap up. But Daya, before I let you go, let's maybe assume we have a crystal ball, and we're looking ahead, maybe into the next 10 to 15 years. What are, from your point of view, some of the most promising developments in sustainable aviation, but more concretely in circularity? And how does Finnair basically envision to play a role in driving the industry's transition towards circularity and net zero?
Well, I'm going to refer back to the climate a little bit here. And I talked about the sustainable aviation fuel earlier. And the sustainable aviation fuel that we use today is mainly used of biogenic feedstocks. So we have the used cooking oil or tallow, which is, of course, a circular feedstock. But going forward, and as the demand grows, there is need for more advanced SAF. So this eSAF, and there we see that the carbon capture and usage to produce actually sustainable aviation fuel is something that we would like to see happen, and we are also driving ourselves as we believe that Finland would be a very good place to produce this eSAF. We have a lot of renewable electricity available. We have the technology know-how and stable political environment. So we believe that we can be driving this production of eSAF from carbon captured from the atmosphere.
Cool. As mentioned, the coffee is empty, and unfortunately, we have to wrap up. Thanks a lot, Tarja, for joining me today. Really interesting to get a glimpse into circularity in the aviation industry. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for having me.
And thanks to all of you out there listening. As always, we hope today's episode has both been insightful, inspiring, gave you some new ideas. If you enjoyed the podcast, please like, subscribe, or give us a 5-star rating. That helps us to grow the Circular Coffee Break community and to reach even more people and to maximize the impact we have in accelerating the transition towards a circular world. Your support actually means a lot for us because we couldn't do it without all of you. Now, the only thing left for me is to thank you once again for listening, and I'm looking forward to seeing all of you here at the Circular Coffee Break podcast.